Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Boy, here we are in July 2024. I've said this before, say this again. Time is just flying. It's, pardon me, it's really kind of scary how time is flying so fast for me. It seems like I'm working about 48 hours a day, to be honest about it. I'm working harder than I ever have in my life. I have more on my plate than I ever have had in my life. And I've got less time than I ever have had in my life because I am growing older. I'm 74 years old now. And so I don't know how much longer the Lord's going to give me. And so I'm feeling the press. I truly am. I'm feeling the press of wanting to finish so many projects. I'm currently working on a large book. It's already well over 200 pages on the mystery of the millennium unveiled. I believe that this book will be a definitive proof that the millennium ended in the first century. I believe the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. I started writing a book some time ago on the Sabbath, celebrating the eighth day. It's already almost 400 pages. Probably a 2-volume set if I have time to finish it. But I don't know if I've got enough time or not. I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm just simply pointing out the facts, 70 or 80, if by reason of strength. That's the way it is, right? And so we deal with it. But I got to tell you, I'm having an absolute ball doing what I'm doing. Uh, I love being with you on YouTube and now TV on Fridays. I love being with everybody on Facebook. And, I told a lady asked me the other day, and I know this is diversion and digression, whatever you want to call it that. A lady asked me the other day, I was in a doctor's office, and she said, "Why are you always so happy?" And I am. But I said, well, a lot of people ask me that question. And I said, the answer is real simple. I said, point number one, I'm a child of God. That gives me every reason in the world to be happy. Number two, I have an absolutely fantastic wife. We've been married 55 years. Couldn't ask for a better partner, helpmate, friend. And I said, what more could I ask? I mean, it's a wonderful life. And she was sitting there just somewhat stunned. And she said, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, it is. I am blessed beyond measure. I really and truly am. I'm thankful to the Lord. I thank Him every single day for the life and for the ministry that I have. It's just a joy and a pleasure. And it's fun. Okay, back to it. The subject of the atonement. When was the atonement consummated? Now look, folks, if you didn't pay careful attention, or if you didn't watch yesterday's program on 1 Corinthians 15 and Hebrews chapter 9 in regard to the consummation of the atonement, let me urge you to do so. Okay? I do not know how anyone can respond to that particular video. Now, there's some people out there who try to nitpick, and find fault. I don't believe you can destroy the argument that I presented yesterday, nor do I believe that you can overcome the argument that I'm going to offer this morning. I believe it's just simply that powerful. So the question is, when was the atonement consummated? Answers are given. Well, it was consummated. Whoops. Answers are given. When was the atonement finished? We are told it was finished at the time of the cross. I've shared with you yesterday, one individual said it was finished the very night of Jesus' resurrection. That's when he came out of the most holy place. Well, then that means that the second coming occurred the night of Jesus' resurrection. Another individual who is constantly finding fault with my videos, this individual said, no, Pentecost was the day in which Christ came out of the most holy place. Well, that must mean the second coming was on the day of Pentecost. Folks, when arguments like this are made, you got to look at the implications of the argument. And if the implications of the argument violate clear-cut text, then the argument is wrong. And that's all there is to it. But now then, let's shift gears pretty radically here. And I want to look at the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 18, now mind you, in chapter 17, we have the prediction of the destruction of the harlot city that had been and was in a partnership of persecution against the church. Real quick digression here. People say, well, you know, book of Revelation was written under Domitian. Well, here's a problem with that. In Revelation chapter 17, you have the beast and you have the woman. The woman rides the beast. She is not the beast. She rides the beast. She is a partnership of persecution against the church. Well, guess what? That persecutorial partnership goes sour. The beast turns on the woman, which means pretty obviously the beast is not the woman. The beast turns on the woman, hates her, destroys her, and burns her with fire. So that must mean that if Domitian is the beast, or if Rome is the beast, that must mean that Rome turns on some other entity with whom it is in partnership of persecution and destroys this other entity. Well, let's see. If you make Rome to be Babylon, that must mean that Rome turns on Rome and destroys Rome. Well, that's a tautology. That's silly. It's unhistorical. But here's the fact. Domitian was never, Rome under Domitian was never in a persecutorial partnership against the church. Period. End of story. What's that saying we've had over the last couple of years? Mic drop. Domitian was never in a partnership with anyone to persecute the church. Hint, clue, spoiler alert, Nero was. Enough of that, all right? Just a little digression there to make people stop and think when they say, oh yeah, Revelation was written under the reign of Domitian. Well, then that means that Domitian was in a partnership with someone, some city, to persecute the church. And let me reiterate, about this, there is absolutely no historical doubt whatsoever. Domitian was never in a partnership with any other city to persecute the church. And Domitian never burned Rome with fire. Hello? So we have this lead-in to what I call a lead-in to chapter 18. And that is the beast turning on the woman, burning her with fire. Well, chapter 18 describes this destruction. And we find further indication as to why that destruction took place. Well, chapter 18, 20, and 24, it is because she killed the apostles and the prophets of Jesus. There's the reason. Among other things, she was a seller of men. She had committed fornication with the nations. She was guilty of the worst of sins. But the denouement, the climax of the chapter is verse 20 and 24, she killed the apostles and prophets of Jesus. Now, the song of victory in Revelation chapter 18. Fallen is fallen. Babylon the Great is fallen. And heaven sings in rejoicing because Babylon is fallen. By the way, this is a recapitulation of Revelation 14, where a great angel flies through the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, and saying, Babylon is fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Same identical vision, different perspectives, different nuances, etc., but the same story. So in chapter 18, and by the way, this city Babylon says, I am no widow. Well, this is remarkable because that's taken, or that language is taken from the Old Covenant, in which a woman that was divorced, and I'm eagerly awaiting Kenneth Gentry's 2-volume set on the divorce of Israel, big thick books on Revelation as the story of the divorcement of Old Covenant Judah and his remarriage of all 12 tribes under the new covenant of Christ, the new marriage covenant of Christ. Okay, so can't wait to get that. I'm very, very eager. So anyway, the point of it is a woman that had been divorced was considered a widow. Because, you got to ask yourself the question. Here in Revelation chapter 18, how could a woman that was slain say, I am no widow? She wouldn't. But a woman in the ancient Near East, a woman that was divorced was considered as a widow. In other words, this is the power of this. This city, Babylon, is saying, I am not divorced. Who was married to the Lord? And thus to be put away would be what? To become a widow. But this city was denying it. I am not a widow. Okay, so you have here language that is highly indicative of a divorcement. That would be Judah. Just like God divorced the 10 northern tribes. Hosea chapter 2. Bring charges against her. What charges? Charge of adultery. So we have the description of this Babylon, this evil, wicked, persecutorial city. And in chapter 19, what do we find? We have the story of salvation. After these things, no, this is not this is not a radically different vision. John is saying, I saw the reason why Babylon was to be divorced. After these things I heard as it were a loud voice of great multitude in heaven saying, Hallelujah, salvation and glory and power belong to our God. So what is coming at the time of this destruction of Babylon? The manifestation of the glory, the power, and the salvation. Oh, and what happens at this destruction? Well, let's see. In Revelation chapter 19, I saw heaven opened, and behold, a great white horse, and he who sat upon it was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and stages war. And his eyes are like a flame of fire, and his head are many diadems, and he has a name written upon him which no one knows except himself, and he is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. Who is that? You know who it is. And the armies which are in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, were following him on white horses, and from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may smite the nations. He will rule them with a rod of iron. He treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God the Almighty. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What do we have here, folks? It's the coming of the Lord. It's the coming of the Lord for salvation, which is the second coming of Christ of Hebrews 9:28 out of the most holy place to consummate the atonement. You know, just like Romans 11:26 and 27, the Redeemer shall come out of Zion, for this is my covenant with them when I take away their sin. Well, wait a minute, I thought sin was taken away at the cross. Right? That's the argument. Revelation is depicting for us that consummate action, consummating action of Jesus Christ to come. What was he going to do when he came? Destroy Babylon. Who is Babylon? Well, it's the city where the Lord was crucified. So in Revelation, salvation comes at the second coming in the destruction of Babylon, the old covenant city. In Hebrews chapter 9, salvation comes at the coming of Christ in fulfillment of the old covenant typology of the day of the Lord. He comes in salvation at the end of the old covenant. Now, next week, when we pick this up, we're going to be talking about the consummation of the atonement and entrance into the most holy place. You definitely don't want to miss that. But for this morning, you just simply have to catch the power of the correlation with Hebrews chapter 9. Salvation would come at the end of the old covenant. Salvation would come at the second coming of Christ. Salvation would come when the atonement was consummated. In Revelation, you have the judgment and the destruction of Babylon, the city where the Lord was crucified, at the second coming of Christ to bring salvation. Oh, and by the way, it's also the time of the wedding, Revelation 19:6. Can't discuss that today. But you see, Revelation 19, the time of the wedding, the saints have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Their sins are forgiven. Atonement. I'm out of time. Listen, thank you so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. Hope you have a fantastic 4th of July. Celebrate our freedoms and our liberties in this great country, even with all of its problems. All right? God bless. I'll see you hopefully Friday morning.